Well, we can finally say that the NHL off-season for the 2021-22 season is going to begin. As in this video, I'll go over some key dates that is in the off-season calendar now that we know the Stanley Cup has been awarded. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And as I mentioned, I'll go over the key dates in the NHL off-season going into the 2021-22 season. If you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe, as I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel. But let's get right to the dates that I got this graphic from capfriendly.com on their Twitter page, and I still say, to my chagrin, it was the Tampa Bay Lightning that ultimately won the Stanley Cup. June 2004 reasons is why I don't like the Tampa Bay Lightning that much. You can also debate about the current system that's in place right now, about the salary cap and not applying during the playoffs, but it's not against the rules, and it was a nice run by the Montreal Canadiens, but Tampa Bay was too much for them, so ultimately the Stanley Cup was awarded, on July the 7th, which is the second latest, for obvious reasons. So because of that, now that the Stanley Cup's been awarded, buyouts could begin for anything. The first buyout here begins. It talks about that earlier of July 17th or 24 hours after the playoffs end. So now that the playoffs are over, you can potentially buy out players right now going into July 17th, which is going to be a big date in NHL offseason, because July 17th, that is when the freeze begins for rosters and be able to figure out who you want to protect and expose for the Seattle Kraken expansion draft. Because it also is mentioned that July 13th, that's the last date that you can talk to players with no movement clause if they were willing to waive it so that they can be exposed to the Seattle Kraken expansion draft, so that potentially other players can get protected. I know that the case right here in Calgary, Milan Lucic has agreed to waive his no movement clause, so that thankfully we can protect another forward. I think the protected players that the Calgary Flames are likely going to protect is goaltender Jacob Markstrom, and then defenseman, it's going to be Chris Tanev as well, Noah Hanifin, and Rasmus Andersson. So I think Mark Giordano is going to be exposed, and then the forwards, thankfully, with Milan Lucic agreeing to waive his no movement clause, knowing that not likely his contract's going to be picked up, I'm going to definitely say Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Matthew Tkachuk, that'll be three, Michael Backlund, Andrew Mangiapane, Elias Lindholm, and then as well as Dylan Dubé, and then I'm trying to think of the other player, Dylan Dubé, Andrew Mangiapane, I already mentioned that, but they're projected 7 players that will be protected by the Calgary Flames. If Milan Lucic didn't agree to waive it, potentially like a Dylan Dubé or a Michael Backlund could be potentially exposed, but I think thankfully those players are going to be protected. I was trying to think, it's Lindholm, Monahan, Gaudreau, Tkachuk, and then got Mangiapane, and then that's the 7 players right there, because it's likely going to be the 7-3-1 that the Calgary Flames are going to go with. So that is the 17th. That's the expansion draft where the player waiver freeze begins. So there might be more activity, especially next week, trying to get compliant with the expansion draft. That's what happened with the Vegas Golden Knights expansion draft 4 years ago. And by the way, the Vegas Golden Knights, they are exempt from this process, so they don't have to worry about protecting or exposing players, because the Vegas Golden Knights will not be participating in the expansion draft. So that's the 17th, July 17th. That is when you can submit your list of who you're going to protect and who you're going to expose, which then the next day on the 18th, it says deadline for NHL to approve and distribute protected lists from the NHL to the Seattle Kraken. I know there's also going to likely be some side deals, under the table deals, where maybe we'll put on the deal that they're going to say, you select this player and we'll give you these assets instead of this player, which I'm going to say, when a case for the Calgary Flames, I mean, I think the 3 likely players that will likely get claimed By the Seattle Kraken, I'm going to say potentially is Mark Giordano. I'm going to say potentially Derek Ryan, which maybe this will play in that maybe he'll get negotiated with the Seattle Kraken. I just put Derek Ryan out there because he is from Spokane, Washington, and maybe the Seattle Kraken want to have some players from the local area nearby, and then defenseman Oliver Shillington. But I don't think there's anyone on the Calgary Flames that we are likely willing to sacrifice some picks and prospect to say, you don't take this player. So I'm going to say that. So that's the 18th. And then also it says on the 18th for the Seattle Kraken, it says start of RFA/UFA interview period for Seattle Kraken players not on the protected list. So that's the one wrinkle in here, is the Seattle Kraken could potentially talk to pending restricted or unrestricted free agents. So that's where it comes into play about, who to protect and expose for that reason as well. That's on the 18th. So then the 21st, that is the big day when the Seattle Kraken submits their selections for the player, like that they'll fill out the roster for the expanded draft. So eventually I plan to make a video on talking about who the Seattle Kraken selected and give my thoughts and feelings on the team that it has, and what do you think how the Seattle Kraken will do in their first season in the National Hockey League. I'm going to say, given that they will be in the Pacific Division, assuming all teams will be back to normal, and looking at the strength of the Pacific Division for this upcoming season, I'm going to say Vegas. Right now, it's still safe to say that they will be first in the division. Then I think the Edmonton Oilers will be second. So third place will be wide open. And depending on, how the other California teams does, let's say if the Flames bounce back, could a team underachieve or overachieve? Could Los Angeles potentially break out? And then depending on obviously who's on the Seattle Kraken, I think third place is definitely going to be wide open. And I think Seattle, based on the players they're likely going to get to select from, they're going to field, or I should say ice, at competitive teams on July 21st. So coming into that weekend, I will plan to recap the expansion draft and give my feelings on it. And then the actual entry draft itself, I guess there's the 22nd where it talks about expansion draft, trade, waiver, player signing, freeze period lifted. So that's when, rosters can open up yet again. So the 17th is when you get all your business done, if you're going to do any business ahead of the expansion draft, before the Seattle Kraken gets to see who's available. Then the actual draft itself on July 23rd, which that will be the Friday night. That will be round one of the entry draft. And the Calgary Flames will be drafting 12th overall after the draft lottery and the fact that the Arizona Coyotes forfeited the draft pick with their violation of the combine training. So the Flames actually technically had the 13th overall pick, but since the Arizona Coyotes forfeit, the Calgary Flames will select 12th in the first round, barring, of course, any transactions if we are either going to move up, move down, or trade that pick away. And then the next day on the 24th of July, that's when the rest of the draft goes out, rounds 2 and 7. So after the expansion draft, I'll do what I've done the last couple of years, is I'll recap the draft, who the Calgary Flames selected, what they did, if they did any trades to pick up picks or make any big trades to improve the lineup for this upcoming season. And I also like to highlight, if any Calgary Lightning got drafted or any other local players of interest got drafted. So that is the expansion draft, and then the entry draft itself. Then the other graphics they highlight here is that the buyout period for the first buyout period ends on July 27th, because after that, the next day on July 28th, that is when free agent frenzy begins. And it's definitely going to be an interesting time how that goes, and of course I'll plan to recap that. That goes into the August long weekend, so we'll see if the Calgary Flames, make any big splashes in the free agent market. I'm going to put this graphic that I found on the Cap Friendly Twitter feed, if it shows up. Look at all the dates, the key dates in the off-season. Now that the Stanley Cup has been awarded, and finally the off-season begins. And keep in mind, this off-season is going to be even more scrunched together, as here we are in the first full week of July. Generally, this is after when the initial period of after the draft has been done, and the first few days of free agent frenzy where the biggest fish have been claimed, but that is going to be pushed back 4 weeks for obvious reasons. And then the plan is that the next season for 21-22 will begin, they saying October 12th. So it's still going to start just a little later, but we definitely have a lot more squashed off season, which I'm definitely going to say after the Calgary Stampede right here in Calgary. I'm anticipating that, as I mentioned in my channel update video, that I think are going to be a lot more NHL content to come, as I am still expecting the Calgary Flames to make changes to the roster because we're still stuck in neutral and we can't just stand pat. But it all starts off with any moves that could be made ahead of the expansion draft, to make other teams compliant or move assets around. Or could we lose a significant piece when it comes to the expansion draft? I don't think it's going to matter too much on who we lose. I know some teams are going to be more affected by others. I'm going to still stick to my 3 players that I think, unless Seattle wants to pick up a veteran defenseman, that we will likely lose Mark Giordano. I mean, 6.75. He only has 1 more year left, and Seattle has put out that said that they are willing to spend to the cap. So that's not going to be an issue for complying and filling out their roster in the expansion draft. I know there's been this debate in Calgary is who's Calgary going to protect? Are they going to protect Mark Giordano or Chris Tanev? I think the obvious answer is you protect Chris Tanev because we've made too much investment on Chris Tanev, and the fact that Mark Giordano is over 37 years old. Also, we're banking on the fact that maybe because he only has 1 more year left at $6.75 million and his play has tailed off. I mean, he hit his peak when he won the Norris Trophy just a couple years ago. I am anticipating that maybe Seattle won't go that way, but he's going to be available. And then Derek Ryan, because of the Washington State, he's from there, maybe they'll pick him. Or I think Seattle might actually negotiate with him and pick someone else. But Oliver Shillington will likely be that more desirable defenseman, a young defenseman that might need a change of scenery. So those are the 3 players. I mean, it would actually sting a little if we actually lost Milan Lucic, because I like how he's fit in the lineup. But yes, the cap hit is what it is, but he has been a fit right here. I'm thinking just because of that, Seattle isn't going to take him, but you just never know. But I don't think whoever we wind up losing in the expansion draft, we are not going to be losing too much sleep over it, and we'll just move on. And there's no one that I'm going to say that is worth giving up any picks or prospects to say, you don't take this player, you take this player instead. But that remained to be seen for the next couple weeks. So let's just might touch upon that now that the Stanley Cup's been awarded. Those are the key off-season dates for the NHL when it comes to the drafts, expansion draft, the entry draft, and free agent frenzy. It's definitely going to be much more of a frenzy this year, because keep in mind that with a more squashed off-season, we're only going to have a month. Feels like we're going to have a month shorter off season. That's preseason is going to start much sooner, and definitely hoping that once preseason gets going, things are slowly, hopefully, maybe getting back to normal, and that we can have the Flames play in front of the Sea of Red again. So I have to say, what do you think of the off season dates? What do you think is going to happen in the Seattle Kraken expansion draft? And I'm just happy that now that the off-season has begun. To my chagrin, the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup, but I still got to congratulate them and on their back-to-back championship. But you've made my hit list, Tampa Bay Lightning, since June 2004, and although because they won the Cup now, and they're in salary cap jail right away for next season, so they got to make some moves themselves. So anyways, I'd like to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home the Flames have been Roughnecks and Stampeders. I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my each channel, and I'm going to be anticipating there's going to be a little more of that coming up the next few months with the NHL off-season, and the fact that CFL season is finally going to begin. Training camp's going to get started, and I'll actually be talking about CFL games and Calgary Stampeder games here shortly. but I also do a variety of non-sports content, which lately I haven't had as much time to do it, but I do have personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also do share my experience on the road or sport event. Hopefully I'll get to do that soon, later this year. And I've done a little more vlogging on the go. Although the last couple months has been a nice filler with, lower sports or less sports stuff to talk about the last couple months here in Calgary. But I'm probably going to be taking a break from vlogging on the go because I'm anticipating I'm going to be busier with sports content coming up again. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, you too, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. I also have my other social medias down in the description below for other ways you can follow me, as I would say. So as I say, go Flames go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.